I raised my son with all my heart, I cooked, I prayed, I stayed awake through countless nights. And yet, the one smile from my daughter-in-law made me feel like a stranger in my own home. Her sweet smile hurt more than any yell ever could. And that's when I realized, love sometimes comes with quiet heartbreak. When my daughter-in-law asked me to leave the room, I did not cry, I did not shout, I smiled. That smile stayed on my face like it belonged there. Soft, polite, calm. But inside my chest something broke quietly. People think yelling hurts more. They think harsh words are the deepest wounds. But they are wrong. Sometimes a sweet smile can hurt more than any yell. I still remember the moment clearly. It was evening. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after dinner. The ceiling fan was moving slowly. The smell of tea was still in the air. Sana stood near the door, her hands were folded politely. Her voice was gentle, almost respectful. "Amy," she said softly, "Saad and I need some space." She smiled when she said it. Not a rude smile. Not an angry one, just sweet. I nodded like I understood that. I smiled back. And I walked away. That night, I lay awake on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I kept asking myself the same question again and again. When did I stop belonging in my own home? I raised my son alone. I taught him how to walk, how to speak kindly, how to respect others. I believed love was enough to secure my place in his life forever. But love changes shape when children grow up. It becomes quieter, smaller, sometimes invisible. That night, the rain began to fall outside. Each drop sounded like a memory hitting the roof, slow, steady, unavoidable. I whispered to the darkness. I didn't know my presence had become a burden. No one answered. When I closed the door behind me that evening, the sound was very soft, oh soft that no one noticed. But I noticed. I stood there for a moment, my hand still resting on the door handle. I could hear Sana's soft footsteps moving away. I could hear Saad's voice, low and calm, asking her something I could not hear clearly. They were talking freely now, because I was gone. I walked slowly down the hallway. The walls felt closer than before. The lights felt dimmer, even though they were the same. I kept my smile on. Not because I was strong, but because I did not know how to remove it. Mothers learn that skill early. Smiling through pain. Smiling through loss. Smiling so children do not feel guilty. I entered my room and sat on the edge of the bed. The bed creaked softly under my weight. I looked around the room that once felt like my safe place. Everything was still there, my cupboard, my prayer mat. The old clock ticking on the wall. Yet something was missing. It was not love. They still loved me. I believed. It was not respect either. It was space. A space I no longer occupied. I whispered to myself. Maybe I am overthinking. Mothers often tell themselves that it helps them sleep. Sometimes. That night I did not sleep. I replayed Sana's smile again and again in my mind. It was not cruel. That was the hardest part. If she had shouted, I could have cried. That if she had been rude, I could have been angry. But she was gentle, careful, polite. Her sweetness left no room for complaint. I asked myself quietly, how do you fight pain that comes wrapped in kindness? Outside, the rain began slowly. Not heavy rain. Just enough to be heard. Each drop felt like a question. Each question had no answer. I remembered the first time Saad smiled at me as a baby. I remembered holding his tiny fingers. I remembered promising myself I would always be there for him. Kept my promise. But no one promises a mother she will still belong. The next morning I woke up early. Habit does not leave easily. The house was silent. Saad and Sana were still asleep. That I moved quietly, as if I were a guest. In the kitchen, I boiled water for tea. The kettle made its familiar sound. It felt comforting, like an old friend. I placed 3 cups on the counter out of habit. Then I paused. I slowly put 1 cup back. I stood there for a long time, just staring at the 2 cups. I smiled again. That smile had become automatic. When Sana entered the kitchen, she greeted me warmly. "Good morning, Amy." Her voice was soft, respectful. Good morning, I replied. She glanced at the stove. I'll handle breakfast today, she said gently. You can rest. He nodded, not because I was tired, but because I had learned that stepping back was easier than explaining pain. I returned to my room, sat near the window, watched the rain dry from the street outside. I thought about how motherhood changes shape. At first, children need your hands. Then they need your guidance. Later, they need your blessings. And one day, they only need your distance. No one tells you that part. Saad avoided my eyes that day. Not intentionally. Just naturally. He was busy, work calls, messages, plans. Life was moving forward. I was standing still. In the afternoon, I folded laundry slowly. Each piece of clothing felt like a reminder. Saad's shirts, Sanaa's scarves. Things that belonged to a life built together. I folded them neatly, placed them carefully. Love, I had learned, sometimes means becoming invisible without complaint. Later that evening, I heard laughter from the living room. Soft laughter. Shared laughter. I stayed in my room. Not because I was told to, but because I felt like I should. That was the moment I realized something important. No one had pushed me out. I had slowly removed myself, piece by piece, smile by smile. And Sanaa's sweet smile had simply shown me where the line was drawn. That night I prayed longer than usual. Not for forgiveness. Not for change. Just for understanding. I asked God, teach me how to exist without being needed. Tears finally came then. Silent, warm. They soaked into my pillow where no one could see them. In the darkness, I accepted a truth that many mothers face quietly. Love does not always protect you from loneliness. And sometimes, the gentlest words leave the deepest wounds. Her sweet smile hurt more than any yell. Morning light entered my room gently, as if it did not want to disturb me. I watched it spread across the wall, touching old photographs, small cracks in the paint, and the edge of my cupboard. This room had been mine for years. Long before Sanaa entered this house. Long before Saad grew taller than me. Long before silence became so loud. I got up slowly and folded my prayer mat. I liked doing things in order. It gave me comfort. In the kitchen, I could hear Sanaa moving about. Utensils clinking softly. The smell of breakfast filled the air. She was good at managing the house. I never denied that. She was organized, efficient, kind in a careful way. I sat at the dining table quietly. The chair felt colder than usual. When Saad entered, he greeted me with a smile. "Ami," he said gently. That one word still held warmth. But it no longer held time. He was always in a hurry now. Even when he sat still, I watched them talk. Not deeply, just daily things. Work, bills, plans. I listened without interrupting. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I did not know if my words still belonged there. As they spoke, I remembered the past. Not sharply, but slowly, like a river flowing backward. Saad was not always this busy man. Once, he was a quiet boy who waited for me outside school. He held my hand tightly, afraid of losing me in crowds. After his father passed away, Saad became quieter, more observant. He watched me carefully, as if learning how to survive through my actions. I worked hard. Not loudly, not proudly, just enough to keep us going. At night, when Saad slept, I would sit near his bed and watch his chest rise and fall. That sound meant safety to me. I taught him kindness before ambition, respect before success. And he listened. That is why, when he grew up well, people praised me. "You raised him well," they said. They did not see the lonely nights, the silent tears, the choices made alone. But I never complained. Motherhood teaches you that love is not a transaction. You give without counting. When Saad told me about Sanaa, his eyes were hopeful. "She is understanding, Ami," he said. "She respects elders." Those words mattered to me. I met Sana before the wedding. She was soft-spoken, always smiling. She looked at me with politeness, not curiosity. I took that as respect. On the wedding day, I watched her sit beside my son, her head lowered, her hands decorated with henna. I whispered a prayer for her happiness. I did not know then that happiness sometimes asks for space, and space can feel like rejection. After the wedding, they moved into my home. People said, "You are lucky. Your son stayed with you." I smiled when they said that. Luck, I learned, does not mean comfort. The early days were peaceful. We shared meals, small conversations, light laughter. I made sure not to interfere. When Sana cooked, I praised her. When she cleaned, I thanked her. When she chose something differently than I would have, I stayed quiet. I believed silence was wisdom. But silence can also be a slow disappearance. One afternoon, I suggested making Saad's favorite dish. Sana smiled gently. "I already planned something else, Sammy." Her tone was polite, final. He nodded. That night, I realized something small had shifted. Not wrong, just different. Days passed. I stopped asking questions, stopped offering suggestions. Not because I was hurt, but because I did not want to disturb the balance. Balance became my goal. I began adjusting my routine. Waking earlier, sleeping earlier, eating quietly. I kept my opinions to myself. I believed this was respect. But deep inside, I missed being heard. I missed being useful. One evening, I overheard Sana talking to Saad. Not complaining, not blaming, just explaining. "Ami is kind," she said softly. "But I think we need our own space." There was no anger in her voice, just calm truth. Saad did not argue. He listened. That hurt more than I expected. Because silence from a son can feel heavier than words. I told myself again, this is normal. Every generation changes. Every home adjusts, but hearts are slower than minds. My heart was still learning how to live quietly in the background. At night, I sat near the window again. The street lights glowed softly. A dog barked somewhere far away. Life continued without noticing my thoughts. I realized then that my role had changed. I was no longer the centered, I was the support beam. Invisible but expected to hold everything. And I was trying. Truly trying. Sana never disrespected me openly. That is important to say. She never shouted. Never insulted. She smiled. That smile made it hard to explain my pain. Because how do you say someone hurt you when they were always kind? I began to understand something difficult. Sometimes people do not mean to hurt you. They are just building a life that no longer includes your presence the same way. And that realization comes quietly, without warning, without cruelty. Just distance. I still love them both. That never changed. But love does not stop loneliness. And that is where my story truly begins. The days did not change suddenly. They changed slowly, like a shadow moving across a wall. At first I did not notice, or maybe I noticed but chose not to name it. I still woke up early every morning. Still prayed. Still moved through the house softly. But something in the air felt different. Not heavy, just distant. Sana had her own rhythm now. Her own timing. Her own way of running the house. I watched from the side, like someone watching a familiar place from behind a glass window. When guests came, she managed everything perfectly. Tea, snacks, smiles. People praised her. She is very respectful, they said. She takes good care of the house. I smiled when they said that. Because it was true. But inside I felt myself shrinking. One afternoon I was cleaning the small storage cupboard. I found Saad's old school notebooks. His childhood drawings. Little notes he had written for me. "Ami is the best," one page said, written in uneven handwriting. I held that notebook for a long time. I was not angry with Sana. That is important to understand. I was grieving a version of life that no longer existed. Small things began to hurt. Not big enough to complain about. just big enough to feel. Meals were eaten without waiting for me. Decisions were made without asking me. Plans were discussed behind closed doors. Doors were not slammed. They were simply closed. One evening, I entered the living room and the conversation stopped. Not suddenly, just politely. Sanaa smiled. Saad cleared his throat. I sat quietly. They continued talking, but the topic had changed. I told myself, they are just being careful. But care can feel like exclusion when you are on the outside. I began spending more time in my room. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I felt safer there. In my room, I did not have to wonder if I was interrupting. I did not have to read smiles or listen between words. Could just exist. One day, Saad came home late from work. He looked tired. His shoulders were heavy. I wanted to ask him if he was okay. But before I could speak, Sanaa said gently, "Let him rest, Ami. He's very tired." Her voice was calm, her smile was soft. He nodded. That night, I realized I had started asking permission to care for my own son. That realization hurt more than I expected. Another day, I cooked Saad's favorite meal quietly. When I placed it on the table, Sanaa looked surprised. "Oh," she said softly, "I already ordered food." Her smile returned. "We can eat this later," she added. Later never came. I wrapped the food carefully and put it in the fridge. I told myself, she did not know. But my heart felt heavy. I began questioning myself. Was I being too sensitive? Was this just my age speaking? Was I holding on too tightly? Mothers often blame themselves first. I blamed myself too. One afternoon, I overheard Sanaa talking to her friend on the phone. Her voice was low, gentle. "She is nice," Sanaa said. "But sometimes I feel awkward." That word stayed with me. Awkward. I did not know my love had become awkward. That night I could not sleep. I thought about how roles change. A mother becomes a background sound. Still present, but no longer central. I wondered if Sanaa felt I was watching her. I wondered if my silence felt heavy to her. I wondered if my presence felt like pressure. I decided to step back more. Less talking. Less asking. Less appearing. I believed distance would make things easier. But distance also makes you lonelier. One morning I noticed my things being moved. Not thrown away, just relocated. My cup moved from the front shelf to my prayer mat folded and placed aside. Small changes. Careful changes. Changes that said, "This space is no longer yours." Saad noticed I was quieter. "Are you okay, Ami?" he asked once. I smiled. "Yes, Beta." That smile was my shield. I did not want to put him in the middle. I did not want to become a problem. So I stayed quiet. But quiet pain grows. Does not disappear. One evening Sanaa sat beside me. She spoke gently. "Ami," she said, "I hope you don't mind if Saad and I make some changes." I nodded before she finished speaking. She smiled. That smile again. It was never cruel. Never sharp. Just sweet. And it left me feeling small. I began eating alone sometimes. Not because there was no place for me, but because I felt like an extra chair. I told myself, this is temporary. But deep inside, I knew something permanent was forming. One night, I heard laughter from their room. Not loud. Not secretive. Just happy. I was glad they were happy. But happiness can hurt when it reminds you of your own loneliness. I sat on my bed, holding Saad's childhood notebook again. I traced his handwriting slowly. I whispered, "When did I stop being your safe place?" No answer came. The conflict was not loud. It did not announce itself. It lived in pauses and smiles and closed doors. And every day it grew a little stronger. I still loved them. That never changed. But love alone could not protect me from feeling unnecessary. And that was the beginning of my quiet breaking. The turning point did not arrive suddenly. It came like a quiet knock on the door, so gentle that I almost ignored it. It was a normal day. Nothing special. Nothing dramatic. That is how life changes sometimes. That morning I woke up feeling unusually tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. The kind that sits deep in the bones. I stayed on my prayer mat longer than usual. Not asking for anything. Just sitting. When I entered the kitchen, Sana was already there. She greeted me politely. Her smile was there as always. I noticed a notebook on the table. Pages filled with writing. "What is this?" asked gently. Sana looked up. "Oh," she said softly. "We're planning some things. For the future." The word future echoed inside me. He nodded. I did not ask more. Later that day, Saad told me they were thinking of rearranging the house. "Just small changes, Amy," he said. "To make things more comfortable." Comfortable. I smiled. "Do whatever you like." Those words came easily. Too easily. In the afternoon, Sana knocked on my door. "Amy," she said kindly. "Can I talk to you?" I felt something tighten inside my chest. "Of course," I replied. She sat across from me. Her posture was respectful. Her voice calm. She spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Amy, you know I respect you a lot." He nodded. "And I care about you," she continued. I nodded again. Then she said the words that changed everything. "I think Saad and I need our own space now." She smiled when she said it. That smile was gentle. Almost loving. But it felt like the ground moved beneath me. For a moment I could not hear anything else. The fan above us kept spinning. A car passed outside. Life continued. But something inside me stopped. I looked at her face. Young, calm, certain. She was not wrong. That was the hardest part. She was not being cruel. She was being honest. I wanted to say many things. I wanted to say, "This is my home too." I wanted to say, "I gave my whole life to my son." I wanted to say, "I am not ready to disappear." But none of those words came out. Instead I smiled. "I understand," I said softly. And that was the moment I truly lost my place. Sana looked relieved. She thanked me. "Thank you for understanding, Amy," she said. Understanding. That word felt heavy. After she left, I sat alone for a long time. I did not cry. I just sat. I realized something then. I had been slowly preparing myself for this moment. Every silence. Every step back. Every smile. This was not sudden. It was inevitable. That evening, Saad did not talk much. He avoided my eyes. Not because he was guilty, but because he did not know how to face me. I did not blame him. He was doing what many sons do. Choosing peace in his marriage. Even if it meant discomfort for his mother. That night I packed a small bag. Not because I was told to leave. But because I finally understood. My presence was no longer needed the way it once was. I folded my clothes slowly. Carefully. Each fold felt like closing a chapter. As I packed, memories came back. Saad learning to walk. Saad holding my finger. Saad calling out for me at night. Those memories stayed. But they belonged to the past. I whispered to myself, "This is what letting go feels like." I did not sleep that night. I sat near the window, watching the city lights. I was not angry, just deeply sad. Sad for myself. Sad for Saad. Sad for all mothers who reach this point quietly. In the early morning, Saad came to my room. "Amy," he said softly, "why are you packing?" I looked at him. Really looked. He was no longer the boy I raised, he was a man now. "I think it's time," I said gently. "For what?" he asked. "For me to give you space," I replied. He looked confused, hurt. "No, Amy," he said quickly. "That's not what we meant. But meaning and feeling are not always the same." I smiled again. "It's okay," I said. "I understand." That smile again. That smile that hid everything. Later that day I left the room quietly. No drama, no tears. Just a soft goodbye. As I closed the door I felt something break inside me. But I also felt something else. Freedom. Not the happy kind. The lonely kind. That was the turning point. The day I stopped hoping things would go back to how they were. The day I accepted that love changes shape. The day I learned that sometimes the deepest pain comes not from anger, but from gentle smiles and polite words. Her sweet smile hurt more than any yell. After Saad left my room that morning, I sat on the bed for a long time. The bag lay open beside me, half-packed. Unfinished. Just like my thoughts. I could still hear his footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Uncertain. He wanted to say something that I knew that. But sons often stop when they reach the edge of guilt. They do not know how to cross it. I touched the folded clothes in the bag. They felt strange, like they did not belong to me anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was preparing to leave a place where my heart still lived. I went to the kitchen. Sana was there, arranging plates. Her movements were calm, confident. She looked up and saw the bag in my hand. "Oh," she said softly. "You're organizing your things?" Her voice was gentle. Not surprised. Almost relieved. That was the moment I truly understood everything. Not because of what she said, but because of what she did not say. She did not ask why. She did not say please don't. She did not look confused. She had already prepared herself for this outcome. And maybe so had I. I smiled at her. "Yes," I said. "Just sorting a few things." She smiled back. That familiar smile. "Let me know if you need help," she said kindly. Help. I wondered when I stopped being the one who helped and became the one who needed to be managed. I sat at the dining table afterward. The same table where I once fed Saad with my own hands, where I once worried about his grades, where I once listened to his dreams. Now I sat there alone. The chairs felt farther apart. I placed my hand on the table surface. The wood was worn in places. Scratched, marked by years of life. This table knew me. But the people sitting at it were learning how to live without me. Later that day, Saad tried again. "Ami," he said softly. "Please don't feel bad." I looked at him. Really looked. His eyes were tired, conflicted. "I don't feel bad," I said. That was not completely true. But it was easier than explaining everything. "We just want to adjust," he continued. "It doesn't mean you're not important." He nodded. "I know," I said. "But importance is not something you explain, that it is something you feel." And I no longer felt it. That afternoon I went back to my room and closed the door. For the first time I locked it. Not to keep anyone out, but to protect what was left of me. I sat on the bed and allowed myself to think honestly. I asked myself questions I had been avoiding. Was I holding on too tightly? Was I expecting too much? Was I afraid of being alone? The answer to all of them was yes. And admitting that hurt. I realized then that Sana was not my enemy. She was simply a woman trying to build her own home, just like I once did. And I had entered her space the same way my elders once entered mine. The difference was, I had nowhere else to go emotionally. I remembered my own early marriage. Living with my mother-in-law. Trying to please her. Trying to be good. I remembered wishing for privacy. For quiet. And suddenly I felt ashamed of my pain. 'Cause I understood Sana too well. That realization broke me more than any argument ever could. 'Cause there was no villain. Just two women standing on opposite sides of time. In the evening I took out an old photo album. Pages yellowed with age. Corners bent. Pictures of Saad as a child. School events. Small celebrations. I traced his face in one photo. He was smiling. Where did I go wrong? I whispered. But deep inside I knew I had not gone wrong. I had just reached the end of one chapter. The sun set slowly outside my window. The sky turned soft orange, then gray. I heard Sana calling Saad for dinner. "Saad," she said gently. "Food is ready." I stayed in my room. No one asked me to come. No one stopped me from staying away. And that silence answered every question I had. Later that night, Sana knocked softly on my door. "Amy," she said, "did you eat?" Her concern sounded real. "Yes," I replied. "I did." Another lie. She paused for a moment. "Okay," she said softly. "Let me know if you need anything." Her footsteps moved away. And I finally cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quiet tears that soaked into my pillow. Tears for the woman I used to be, tears for the home that no longer felt like mine. Tears for the smile that had hurt me more than any yell ever could. That night I made a decision. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. But out of self-respect. I would not wait to be gently pushed aside. I would step away with dignity. The next morning I finished packing. Only essentials. I left behind things that once felt important. Because I had learned something important. You cannot force your place in someone else's future. You can only choose how you leave their present. When I stepped out of the room with my bag, Sana looked up. Her eyes widened slightly. "Amy, are you going somewhere?" Smiled. "Yes," I said calmly. "Just for a while." She nodded. That was all. No drama. No argument. Just acceptance. Saad came running from the other room. "Amy," he said, "please don't do this." I touched his arm gently. "Beta," I said, "this is not punishment, this is understanding." He looked like he wanted to say more. But words failed him. Just like they had failed me for so long. As I walked toward the door, I felt both heavy and light. Heavy with memories. Light with clarity. I did not look back. Because some endings must be walked away from slowly to truly be understood. That was the true turning point. Not the conversation. Not the smile. But the moment I chose myself without blaming anyone. The moment I understood that love does not always mean staying. Sometimes, love means leaving quietly before you disappear completely. I did not know where I was going when I left that house. I only knew where I could no longer stay. The road felt unfamiliar, even though I had traveled it many times before. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. I stayed with my sister at first. She welcomed me without questions. She did not ask why. She did not ask how long. She only said, "Rest." That word felt like permission. For the first few days I did nothing. No cooking. No cleaning. No planning. I slept. I prayed. I stared out of windows. My body needed rest, but my heart needed time. At night, memories came quietly. Not sharp. Not angry. Just soft reminders. Sawed as a child. Sana's smile. My own silence. I let those memories pass through me without fighting them. I realized something important during those nights. Pain does not disappear when you run from it. But it softens when you sit with it. One evening my sister sat beside me. "You're very quiet," she said gently. I smiled. "I've said everything already," I replied. She did not push me. Some people understand that healing does not need advice, it needs space. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, my body began to feel lighter. I woke up without heaviness in my chest. I ate without forcing myself. I slept without crying. The pain did not vanish. But it stopped controlling me. Saad called me one afternoon. I stared at the phone for a long time before answering. "Amy," he said softly. I could hear worry in his voice. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm fine," I replied honestly. That surprised both of us. There was silence between us. Not uncomfortable, just real. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said finally. "I know," I replied. And I truly meant it. He told me the house felt quiet now. Too quiet. Sana was managing things well, he said. But something felt missing. I listened. I did not rush to fill that space. Because some emptiness must be felt to be understood. After the call, I sat quietly for a long time. I realized I was no longer waiting for an apology. I was no longer hoping for things to return to how they were. I had accepted that life only moves forward. And acceptance is a kind of peace. One morning I went for a walk alone. The sun was warm. Children were playing nearby. Life was moving. I watched a young mother holding her child's hand. The child laughed. I smiled softly. I did not feel jealous, that I felt grateful. Grateful that I had lived that chapter fully. Began doing small things for myself. Reading. Gardening. Writing my thoughts. I had not realized how much of myself I had placed aside over the years. Motherhood had filled me completely. There had been no space left. Now I was learning to make space for myself. One day Sana called me. Her voice was hesitant. "Amy," she said, "I hope you are well." "I am," I replied. A pause. I wanted to say, "I never meant to make you feel unwanted." Her voice was sincere. Closed my eyes. "I know," I said gently. That was all that needed to be said. Sometimes, understanding does not require long explanations. We talked for a few minutes. Simple things. Weather, health, life. No blame, no guilt. When the call ended, I felt something lift inside me. Forgiveness had found its way in quietly. I realized then that Sana's smile was never meant to hurt me. It only hurt because I was not ready to face what it meant. Change always arrives gently before it arrives completely. Months later, I visited their home again. Not to stay, just to visit. The house looked different. Rearranged. More like theirs now. And that was okay. Sana welcomed me warmly. Saad hugged me tightly. The table had 3 chairs again. But this time I knew where I stood. Not at the center. Not in the shadows. Just present. I stayed for tea. We talked calmly. I did not feel small, that I did not feel invisible. Because I had learned something powerful. My worth does not depend on how much space I take in someone else's life. When I left that evening, Sana smiled at me again. That same sweet smile. But this time it did not hurt. Because I was no longer expecting it to carry something it never promised. Now when I look back, I do not see betrayal. I see transition. I see a mother learning to let go, a son learning to balance, a daughter-in-law learning to claim her space. No villains. Only humans. If you ask me what I learned, I would say this. Do not measure love by closeness alone. Sometimes love exists best with boundaries. And do not disappear quietly just to keep peace. Choose yourself gently before the world chooses for you. Her sweet smile hurt more than any yell. But it also taught me how to stand again. Can hold peace. After that visit, I returned to my sister's home with a lighter heart. Not happy in the loud sense, but settled. There is a difference between happiness and peace. Happiness jumps. Peace sits quietly beside you. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. No memories chased me, no questions kept me awake. Just silence. Kind silence. I began noticing small changes in myself. I no longer waited for the phone to ring. I no longer checked the time wondering what Saad might be doing. My life was no longer paused. It was moving again. In the mornings, I made tea just for myself. 1 cup, 1 chair, 1 quiet moment. At first, it felt lonely. Then it began to feel complete. I realized something important then. Loneliness comes from feeling unwanted. Solitude comes from choosing yourself. And I was finally choosing myself. Sometimes old thoughts returned. Moments from the past. Words left unsaid. When they came, I did not fight them. I let them pass like clouds. Because pain loses its power when you stop resisting it. One afternoon, my sister asked me something gently. "Do you miss the house?" she asked. I thought carefully before answering. "I miss a version of it," I said. She nodded. She understood. We rarely miss places, that we miss the role we played in them. Saad visited me one weekend. He looked different. More aware. Less rushed. He sat beside me quietly. "Amy," he said, "I didn't know you felt so alone." I looked at him calmly. "I didn't know how to say it," I replied. We sat in silence for a moment. "I'm learning," he said finally. Smiled. That was enough. I noticed something then. When you stop demanding understanding, sometimes it arrives on its own. Over time, my relationship with Sana softened. Not closer, but clearer. She called occasionally, asked about my health, shared small updates. She was not cold. She was simply living her life. And I respected that. I no longer expected her to fill an emotional space that belonged to me. One day she said something that stayed with me. "Amy," she said, "I hope one day you'll feel proud of how we handled everything." Pause. "I already do," I replied honestly. Because pride does not come from control, it comes from grace. I began helping other women quietly, listening, sharing stories, offering comfort. I saw myself in them. Mothers who felt invisible. Women who gave everything and forgot themselves. I did not give advice, that I only listened. Sometimes being heard is the beginning of healing. I learned to enjoy my own company. Long walks. Soft music. Old memories that no longer hurt. Felt whole again. Not because life returned what it took, but because I stopped waiting for it to. Looking back now, I see my pain clearly. It was not caused by Sanaa's smile, it was caused by my fear of becoming unnecessary. Her smile only showed me the truth I was not ready to face. If I could speak to my younger self, I would say this. Do not tie your worth to how much you are needed. You are worthy even when you are not required. I no longer feel bitterness. Only understanding. Families change. Roles shift. Homes grow and shrink in different ways. And that is not failure. That is life. Her sweet smile hurt more than any yell. But it also taught me something valuable. Pain can be a teacher. If there are some mornings now, when I wake up and I do not think of the past right away. That is how I know I have healed. The memories still live inside me, but they no longer rush forward the moment my eyes open. They wait politely. Like guests who know they are welcome but no longer in charge. I live simply now. My days are quiet. Not empty, just gentle. I wake up when my body is ready. I pray slowly. That I drink my tea without hurrying. I listen to birds outside my window. I notice the light on the walls. These small things were always there. I just did not have Spacito see them before. Sometimes Saad visits me. He sits beside me, not across from me. That small detail matters. We talk about simple things. Work. Weather, life. We do not dig into old wounds, that we do not pretend they never existed. We simply let them rest. I can see growth in him now. Not perfection, just awareness. And that is enough for a mother's heart. Sanaa still smiles when she sees me. That same sweet smile. But now I see it differently. I no longer search it for hidden meanings. I no longer measure my worth by how wide it is or how often it appears. It is just a smile. And that realization has set me free. I have learned something important about pain. Pain does not always come from cruelty. Sometimes it comes from truth arriving before we are ready. Sanaa's smile was never meant to push me away. It only marked a boundary I had not prepared myself for. If I am honest, the deepest pain was not losing Spacey in my son's home. It was losing the identity I had wrapped myself in for so many years. I was Saad's mother. That was my whole world. When that role changed, I felt like I disappeared. But I did not. I only transformed. Now I am still a mother. But I am also a woman with her own breath, her own rhythm, her own place in the world. I do not need to be needed. Every momento feel valuable. I am valuable because I exist. I often think of other mothers when I sit quietly in the evening. Mothers who give everything and call it love. Mothers who smile through hurt because they do not want to be a burden. Mothers who are praised for strength but never asked how tired they are. To them I want to say this gently. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to rest. Love does not disappear when you do. Looking back, I do not regret my silence. That time it was all I knew. But if I could change one thing, I would have listened to my pain sooner. Pain is not an enemy, it is a messenger. Tells you when something inside you needs care. I also understand Sanaa better now. She was not pushing me out. She was trying to build something of her own. Just like I once did. We were not enemies. We were two women standing at different points off the same journey. Nsad. He did not abandon me. He was learning how to balance love. That lesson is never easy. Children grow up and parents must grow inward. That is the part no one prepares you for. Now, when I visit their home, I go as a guest. And that is not an insult. It is clarity. I arrive without expectations, that I leave without heaviness. I enjoy the time we share instead of mourning the time that has passed. There is a quiet strength in knowing when to step back without bitterness. Took me a long time to learn that. But I learned it. Sometimes late at night I sit by the window and think of that moment. The moment Sana smiled and asked for space. I no longer feel the sharp ache. I feel understanding. Because that moment did not break me. Changed me. Her sweet smile hurt more than any yell ever could. But it also showed me where my healing needed to begin. Life does not always hurt us with loud cruelty. Sometimes it hurts us gently so we can learn without being destroyed. If you are listening to this and you feel unseen, unneeded, or quietly pushed aside, please remember this. Your worth does not fade when your role changes. You are not forgotten. You are evolving. Homes change. Families shift. People grow. But the love you gave does not vanish. It lives on in the kindness of your children, in the strength of your sacrifices, and in the quiet wisdom you carry forward. I walk forward now with calm steps. No bitterness, no blame. Just understanding. And peace. This is not a story about loss. It is a story about learning how to let go without losing yourself. And that is the lesson I carry with me. Sometimes the softest moments teach us the hardest truths. And sometimes, the sweetest smile hurts more than any yell. 'Cause it asks us to grow. I have learned that life does not announce its hardest lessons, it whispers them, softly, gently, so that you only realize the truth once it has already settled in your bones. Her smile, the one that hurt me more than any yell, still comes to my mind sometimes. It was never meant to wound, it was meant to exist naturally, freely. But for me, in that moment, it revealed a reality I was not ready to face. I was no longer the center of their world. At first, that truth felt like a sharp, invisible knife that I carried it quietly, folding it into my daily life like a secret I could not share. I smiled, I prayed, I pretended I was okay. Because mothers always do. Because mothers learn to carry pain in silence. Yet in that silence I discovered something unexpected. Strength I didn't know I had. The kind of strength that does not shout or demand attention. The kind of strength that rises when you accept that some chapters must end so new pages can be written. By them, by me, by life itself. I realize that love is not ownership, it is not control, it is not measured by how close someone stays. Love is letting go. Love is giving them space to grow. And love, sometimes, is choosing to step back without resentment, even when your heart aches with every step. I am still a mother, I am still the woman who held her son's hand when he learned to walk, I am still the woman who stayed awake through countless nights, praying for his safety, his happiness, his life. But I am also a woman who must learn to exist outside the center of his world, a woman who must remember that her worth does not depend on being needed, a woman who can smile quietly, even when her heart is tender from the weight of absence. I have learned to find peace in the quiet, to love without demanding reciprocation, to exist fully, without needing approval, to accept that sometimes the sweetest smiles will hurt because they reveal truths we are not yet ready to face. And yet, those same smiles, when understood, can teach us resilience, patience, and grace. I now walk gently through my life, carrying both my memories and my pain with care. I carry Saad's childhood laughter, Sana's gentle politeness, and the weight of my own sacrifices. I do not shrink anymore, I do not disappear quietly, I simply breathe. Fully, calmly, and without apology. Her smile hurt me deeply, yes, but it also woke me up. It showed me the edges of love, the boundaries of connection, and the power of acceptance. I will never forget the ache of that smile, nor the lessons it carried. I will never forget the quiet of the house, the silence in Saad's eyes, the gentle politeness that hid unspoken distance. I will never forget the loneliness that taught me to find myself. If you are listening to this, and you have felt invisible, unneeded, or quietly pushed aside, I want you to know this. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are evolving. You are learning the most difficult truth of all. Love does not always protect you from pain, but it can teach you how to stand tall anyway. I am still their mother, I am still a woman who loves. And I am also free. Free to live, free to breathe, free to carry my own heart with tenderness. Her sweet smile hurt more than any yell ever could, but it also gave me the courage to see clearly. Love is not possession, it is freedom, it is patience. And sometimes it is letting go gracefully without losing yourself in the process. And in that letting go, I found myself again.